I asked them how big a pack we're dealing with, and they said somewhere between 5 and 15 wolves. We've lost 6 cows and 2 calves already that we know of, and
just this spring.
Just this spring.
Our outfit has been dragged through the mud for 15 years because we decided we were going to speak out against the wolf.
Now, I would not let my kids wander out into the brush. Not with the wolf problem the way it is.
Somebody's going to have to stick their neck out for the ranching community. I don't know who it's going to be, but somebody's going to have to, and that's what it's going to take to get anywhere in a positive direction.
Like I did as a young one. They tell me about pals, they tell me about women, tell me about the code that we should be living. When it comes unwound, you might as well trust us. When it comes unwound, you might as well trust us. Give them Western justice.
I'm Dave Duquette from Western Justice, and I'm here to talk about wolves and wolf depredation with Butch Knowles from Oregon and Mathan Knapp from Washington State. We got some pretty critical things we want to talk about today. So Mathan, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Mathan Knapp. I'm one of the 4 partners of Diamond M Ranch, and the last 15 years we've been the biggest wolf cow-calf conflict ranch in Washington State.
Butch? Not that everybody needs to know who you are, because most people watching this are going to know who you are, but give us the rundown of Butch Knowles. I don't want just the basic, I'm a rancher from...
Well, I'll do the short version. I'm Butch Knowles, and I born and raised here in Oregon. I grew up in Central Oregon, and of course, I've been involved in the rodeo business my whole life, and I married a girl from Heppner, into an established ranch that they founded in 1883. And so Mary, my wife, and I now manage the ranch with our 2 sons, Brian and Blake. And same thing is I watched a documentary about Diamond M Ranch and the wolf problem they've been having, and which was really well done, by the way. But just wanted to pass along that it's just a mirror of what we're dealing with on our ranch as well. And so it's to the point where I think we need to get it out a little more to the public. We've just kind of started dealing with ODFW and some things on our wolf problems. And it's time we do something a little more. It's out of control.
So tell us why you just started dealing with ODFW when this has been a problem for several years.
No, it's been a problem. It's been I think our first wolf sightings were probably, I don't know, probably 15 years ago. They've kind of started coming in, and we didn't really know what to expect either. It's all new, and so fast forward to now, we'd have wolf problems. You'd ride up on a group of cattle with your cow dogs to move them here or there, and immediately if they've been wolfed or not, because the cows react differently. The psyche that wolves put into cattle it's crazy. Honestly, it is. It changes them completely in how they handle and what you do. And sometimes you're better off not to even have a cow dog with you, because it creates more problems than it helps. And so and then fast forward to the last 3 or 4 years, we've had a lot of depredation. When winter before last, we probably buried 14 cows off of our upper ranch. And I never said anything. I wasn't sure what to do, how to deal with it, what the ODF and W and what any of them would do as far as to help us in this situation. So we kind of kept it to ourselves. Then we went to the mountains with them in the summer, and of course we had more depredation. And then now we came back to the ranch that we had so many problems the winter before. And same thing, we've lost 6 cows and 2 calves already that we know of. And
just this spring.
Wow. This spring. Yeah. Yeah, there's a pack that, the den is within, I'm going to say 5 to 6 miles of our ranch. And so we're right in the middle of the pack. And the pack, they just, I asked them how big a pack we're dealing with, and they said somewhere between 5 and 15 wolves. So yeah, that's a big, vague space there.
Yeah, that's very...
But if it's, if you're looking at 8 10, and Mathan knows because they've been in this deal a lot longer than we have. But when you get 8, 10, 12, 15 wolves together, they do some damage.
Yeah. You know, I like to say that, you know, these California guys, we just went down and filmed in California, spent a week down there, and Washington State's probably at least 10 years ahead of California in problem, in this problem.
Right.
Washington State's probably 5 years ahead of Oregon,
I would say, yes.
And so, Mathan, give us the basic overview of what you guys have been dealing with up there.
Well, I think it just all comes down to we don't have no help, and it's nice. I'm glad to see Butch coming out and speaking out against this in Oregon and stuff like that. There's a lot of ranches that don't want to be vocal because there's a lot of consequences that go along with it. You know, our outfit has been dragged through the mud for 15 years because of we decided we were going to speak out against the wolf and been attacked left, right, and behind you by the environmental communities. And so that's a big reason that nobody will come out and talk about it because of the repercussions that go along with it, you know. So in our experience, the environmental groups have used the wolf to try to get rid of public land grazing. And that's been a main talking point of all of them, is to get our cattle off of the forest. You know?
And you had a Fish and Wildlife agent tell you that 3 different times tell you guys that he wanted you off his goal was to have you off the rangeland.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why it's pretty hard to put your trust in somebody when they tell you to your face, well, I would like to see less cattle on the landscape. Well, where do we go from here? You know, and so that's a tough thing to deal with when these people are charged with managing the predators on the landscape.
And that's pretty at odds with this administration right now too. Yeah. I mean, they're trying to get more people out on the rangelands to mitigate fires and help mitigate those fires. And we all know, we've seen, you know, the graze land where a fire burns up to graze land and it stops. You were just telling me earlier about a couple of them right across the hill here, or right across the river here, where the truck starts a fire and it burns right up to where you guys were grazing and stops.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of benefits that people don't realize, you know, and I think that's where I don't know how we change the public narrative of cattle on the landscape. You know, we pay a fee to be on the public land, and we own the private ground, you know, and so, but as far as let's just go on the federal aspect for a minute. Our federal and state leases, we pay to be there. And a lot of people think that, it's just these welfare ranchers out here and they're just railroading everybody else and taking over the ground. No, there's a price that was agreed upon, and the feds want us there, and they want more cattle on the forest. And people say, oh, well, it's dirt cheap, and that's why you guys want it. And that couldn't be further from the truth. By the time, you figure in what, under our current circumstance, how much it costs us to manage our cattle on there with this wolf conflict, and it is our highest price pasture, you know, and so that's.
Well, it's not even just that. I mean, the management of federal grounds is the ranchers. I mean, I've been all over filming wild horses and now these wolves, and the ranchers are the only ones that deal with infrastructure. So a lot of the wildlife wouldn't have any. Take Southern Oregon or Southeast Oregon or Nevada, they wouldn't have any water for 1 million acre swaths if it wasn't for the ranchers. There's no fencing. There's no any of that. I mean, there's millions of dollars that get put out. I mean, millions of dollars that get put out every year just in infrastructure. And you guys taking care of the water systems and making sure the springs aren't stomped in and you know, that I mean, it amazes me that these people call ranchers welfare ranchers on these public lands when they spend a lot of money to take care of them.
Yeah, it really is, you know, and of course, I'm sure Mathan and them deal with it too. You're required to upkeep of fences, and not just keep an old fence up. When it gets old, you're required to build new ones. And I don't know if you've built new fence lately, but it's about $4 a foot when you start building it, you know, and when you've got 40 miles of fence to put in some of these pastures, it's a big investment. And it's not only that, and it's not just you know, I know on one of our ranches, or that we would graze, and then they had right beside it, they had a Nature Conservancy ranch that they didn't no grazing whatsoever. And when we would move the cattle off, and that new green grass would come in the fall, all the elk would go to where the cattle were. You know, they would follow the cattle for the fresh feed, and the fish and wildlife, or maybe the Forest Service as well, they do prescribed burns, you know, trying to get rid of that old feed. So the elk will have clean, fresh green feed, similar to what we do for them for free with ranching. So, you know, there's a lot of benefits, not just the fire benefit, but there's a lot of benefits that come, and they're finding that out more and more, I think.
Well, and there's a really good case study down there in Southern Oregon, the Malheur Refuge, the very famous now, thanks to Bundy's and their deal. That Malheur Refuge is so overgrown. And they did that for the geese. You know, they let it go natural for the geese, and they don't let anybody go in and graze. And Hammond's actually used to have the grazing permit on there, and now all of the geese go and land in all the alfalfa fields,
same deal,
in the fields all around it, and they don't even go into the refuge. So
yeah, no, it's the same
example.
deal. Yeah.
I mean the I don't want to call it straight out stupidity, but it really is of our federal government that doesn't realize they don't utilize the ranchers and what they're saying near enough. And I thank God right now this administration is, and they're listening to they're very much into the common man and want to, you know, the guy that's out there on the ground. They want to listen to stakeholders, not to associations and big organizations. So.
Well, and that's who they need to listen to. You know, we're the biggest conservatives that there are. When you think you make your living off these ranches, you don't overgraze them, you don't undergraze them, there's a lot of things you got to do to stay in business. And to stay in business, you got to be real careful on every aspect of it. And I think that's what's so disturbing about the wolf deal now, because that's a compounding problem, and there is, I don't think there's any way you can manage them. That's what I'm seeing more and more of, is the lack of management. You can't manage an apex killer.
You look at Canada. You look at Canada right now. I mean, they got bounties on them, and they're killing them out of helicopters, and they're trying to get rid of them. They thought we were just total fools for wanting to pay them $250,000 for a big male wolf, you know. And that's what we did in the 90s. And Bill Clinton's infinite wisdom and his Fish and Wildlife's infinite wisdom there. Mathan, I want to go back a little bit to something you said earlier, and that's about the threats and the problems and why, like when I went up to Colville to film this first episode of the documentary, there were people we had to convince that are having a major issue. We had to convince them to allow us to film them, because they were worried about the repercussions from the environmental groups and the animal rights groups. Tell us what your guys' situation, what happened to you, because I think the audience is really going to want to hear how foul it got up there.
Yeah. Well, there was a big pack of wolves that the managing on the department side was slow, and they ended up killing a whole bunch of them because they drug it out. Instead of killing them when there was just a couple offending wolves, we drug it out for 4 years. And by the end of it, there was a lot of dead wolves, and it was a bad media trip, and they drug everybody through the mud, and we didn't kill them. It was all that, that was department handled is what that was by the end of it. And so, but it got put in the media that it was us. We were the culprits, and that was those poor wolves wouldn't have died if it wasn't for Diamond M Ranch out there killing them. And that was a wrong way to put it in the media anyway. But the media was weaponized against Diamond M Ranch, and the things that come along with that was death threats every day. And so that made everybody around that was looking at this scenario when it was first getting rolling, and they were like, we don't want no part of that. We were outspoken about it.
Who were they giving death threats to?
Well, the death threats would come in, and we would all be at work. we were handling the cattle, and so our wives had to be there, and my grandmother-in-law is the sweetest lady you'll ever meet, and she had to, and that sacrificed everything for this ranch, everything, and then she's got to answer the phone and have people every day telling her how she's the worst human being, and they're going to come out and burn the ranch down, and they're going to come kill us, and we better watch our kids when they get off the school bus. And to deal with that, when all you wanted was a little bit of justice for your cattle and for your business, and then to have I think all the surrounding ranchers and people that were involved thought, man, we don't want to go down that road. And so it was weaponized to keep us quiet. And I think it made a lasting effect for a lot of the producers in the area to think, man, we don't want to be in the spotlight because we've seen what goes along with that. So,
and that's basically how you conveyed it to us before, which was, you didn't want to bring heat down on the ranch by.
Yeah. And that's, it wasn't so much I was worried about the death threats, although I'm not surprised that they come along with it, but, I wasn't sure how we were going to handle it, and finally it's like, you know what, we need to expose this. This is not going to get fixed by itself. And so, the big deal is when you look at the state of Oregon, for example, it's divided into 3 chunks, actually. Everything on the east side of Highway 395, everything on the west side, and then everything on the other side of the Cascades. And so on the east side of Highway 395, they've delisted them. In other words, if they're in your cattle and they're raising havoc, you can eliminate them if you can, but it's not that easy. But
right.
On everything in the center where we're at now, they're federally protected still. So, I guess what I'm asking is, let's if you want wolves in the wildernesses and on the top of the Cascades or wherever you want them, the minute they make contact, and start depredating cattle or even contact with people, let us treat them like a predator, like we do coyotes. Coyotes have been around forever. And if you let the numbers get so big, you're going to have a lot of problems with coyotes as well. But we can, hire a helicopter, take some numbers out and keep them managed. That's called management. And until we can do that, this is not going to go away. It's only going to get worse. I mean, it's the number of, when we were in the mountains now, we saw wolves last fall. We'd see them every other day up there. And the elk carcasses are just strewn everywhere. I mean, it's not just cattle depredation. The only bad part is they say once they start killing cattle, they'll run through a herd of elk to get to cattle because it's simpler to begin with. You get a cow that's protecting her young calf and, they circle her up. She's not going to run. And so then they just hamstring her and bring her down. But it's a tough deal, and it's very serious.
I want to go back to the story you told us about the skinny cows you found at the gate and what that was all about.
Well, the first year we had the big problems, we had them on our winter ranch, and in this country it's all grass. It's just no timber or anything covering it up. So you bring them into the fall, and if you don't have a real cold snap or snow to cover that grass, they can winter quite a while on that feed. And we had, luckily, an open, a lot of rain. It wasn't sub-zero temperatures. It was probably averaged about 40 degrees and just perfect for fall grazing. And so we would go up, but the problem was the fog moved in. There was a dense bunch of fog for, I want to say 3 or 4 weeks. It just laid on the ground. But we would go up through that ranch and we would check salt and we'd look at cows and check feed more than anything, make sure they weren't out of feed. And so we pushed them into probably mid-January. Finally, I said, we probably need to go open some gates, let them drop down and start feeding them. They're going to be calving and we need to take care of them. So I went across there and started opening gates, and I came to one gate and there were like 5 cows there that were absolute rails, just rails. And it's like, what in the world? And I went home that night, told my wife, I said, I don't know how we did it, but we've starved those cows. There's no way they should be thin like that. Well, so the next day we've got a family that lives there in that house. She's a school teacher. She was going to work at 5 a.m, and the wolves followed them right down into that next pasture. And the psyche, and since then we've done some research and we've seen other cattle that do this and talked to other guys that deal with wolves, and they say absolutely it'll do it. But not all the cattle, but a certain amount of cattle, when wolves get in them, it freaks them out and they go to a corner. And that's what these cows were trying to get away. They will run into a barn lot for safety when wolves get in them. But we had them fenced to where they were staying up in the upper pasture. And when I went and opened the gates, of course, there they were. But these cows went to a corner and they stood there and they didn't eat or drink. They just stood there and just starved and starved and starved until I came upon them. And luckily we didn't have a terrible winter, or we'd have lost a lot more cows than we lost. But those certain cattle, there were probably 5 or 6 of them that were so weak, they finally perished. We couldn't get them caught back up. And so after that, it's like, oh my gosh, because we went to a pasture up out of Pendleton that wolves were in. Same thing. We'd drive them up the mountain to good feed, and 2 days later they'd be back off that mountain, and you drive them back up and they're back off that mountain. And there was the only reason I know this, there was a guy that owns the ranch and he had his cattle in a pasture adjoining this one. And when we were gathering our cattle in the fall, we picked up 2 of his cows that were rails, just like these cows, rails. And they weren't out of feed and they weren't out of water, and they knew the pasture. A lot of times cattle that don't know the pasture, you'll have bigger problems, but they knew everything they needed to know to keep weight on. Right. And they just went to a corner and they stood there, absolutely stood there until we found them and trailed them in with our cows. So it's the psyche.
Mathan, I want you to tell us about like the pressure of getting the cattle up in the mountains and then how they come back down. You talked about.
Yeah. I mean, Butch knows too. You get in these mountains and to get them where they're going to spend some time, we unload and start driving them up the top. We unload at the end of the road and start driving them up the hill, and you get way up in there, and it's a long, hard push getting them to the tops of these mountains.
I think your father-in-law told me it's a 3-day push on some of those pastures.
Yeah, we got a couple where we drive them, halfway and then leave them there, and then pick them up the next day and take them, finish them out. There's some big ones that are way back in there, but the feed is phenomenal. That's the thing. I mean, a lot of people say the timber feed's not good. Heavy dense timber's not good for cows. Well, they ain't never been in the cattle crest, because that grass is 2 foot tall and springs everywhere, and it's truly amazing. But yeah, it's a hard, long pull to get in there, and those cattle only got to get bumped about twice before you can't hold them up there. You can drive them up, and that's what we've been doing the last several years. Is just we'd go up there, find them all caked up at the bottom again, and then the environmental community says that we're overgrazing, and that's our fault. So we every day we're continuing to take them back up and try to keep them high, and this from a management standpoint, it is almost impossible. I mean, you can't keep them up there. They'll crash fences, then they'll be getting out, and we're responsible for these cattle. These are our cattle. We're responsible to keep them. I mean, we've been 80 years on the Forest Service, and we've never once received an out of compliance letter. But we have a great working relationship with the Forest Service. They got a great bunch of people over there, and we have a good relationship, and we can't hold them on there. But if they get out, that's our responsibility to get them back on the forest and fix the fence and manage our cattle. And it is the Department of Fish and Wildlife's job to manage their wildlife, and they have done a piss poor job up to this point. So,
I want you to go back. Something that we talked about in the first documentary. For these listeners, I want to talk about how Len talked about the Forest Service coming to him, or his dad. Maybe it was his dad that they came to, and you guys were the first ones that actually trucked cattle.
Yeah, well,
to an allotment.
Most of the ranches up there, they were you had to still, most people have a back gate out of their home place, and so they winter them right in the bottom, and then they go up in the spring and open their back gate and ride their cattle up on the mountain, you know. And all of our allotments except for one is we have to haul to, you know. So we got even the one at our home place, we still got to truck them up into there, you know. So then that was when they came to him and said, hey, we got a lot of these vacant sheep allotments that we would like to utilize. And those guys at that time, Len and his dad and his uncle, they loaded them trucks and started hauling them up in there with a bunch of old broke down machinery, you know, 12 pair at a time.
Yeah,
so
he told us they were the old 5-ton military trucks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He had a couple of those that he was hauling them up there with, which Len, how old's Len?
83.
Yeah. It was great sitting down with him and listening to the stories that came out of that. But yeah, to be the first ones that the Forest Service came to basically and said, hey, we really need to use these allotments, and we need this forage eaten off for the fact that it mitigates fire, for one. I mean, and to me, that's the biggest point that nobody understands, or none of these activists want to listen to, is that the cattle grazers in the mountains are actually doing a great service. Because you'll see, I don't know how many times I've had people send me pictures or video evidence of fires that stop where the grazing was at.
Yeah.
You know, and it's hard to imagine that if you got two brain cells sparking together every once in a while, you can't understand that, you know, that's a good thing to get rid of the low level fuels. And it was kind of funny because in the first Trump administration, I was pushing that issue a lot, and he did an 8-point grazing plan. Our Chris Stewart from 96 Ranch down there in Paradise, she had done an 8-point grazing plan, and the president put it out there, and he kept going out and talking about, I don't know if you ever saw this, but he kept talking about, you know, we got to clean the forest. We got to get the leaves off the ground, and we got to clean the leaves up and all that, because it's creating fires, these low level fuels. And I kept trying to talk to some of the people around him and say, tell him to quit talking about the leaves. It's not the leaves. It's the grass. It's the grass. The
fuel.
It's the you know, the plants that you know, all these ungulates will go eat. So anyway.
I did want to expand on one more topic,
okay,
as far as the data that goes along with this wolf depredation. You know, we got into that before. Me and you've talked about it, and I've talked to Butch. They're claiming certain numbers per year, and that's where I think the people watching this video should definitely get some background information. In 2024, they said there was 40 attacks, and 2025 they said there was 17, and on paper, that looks really good. You know, you could most of the people, I saw it on the news channel. Most of the people see that and they're like, "Man, this wolf conflict's getting better."
Yeah,
you know, it's getting better. It's improving every year. See that? They cut it in half, over half. You know, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, Butch is feeling it. We're feeling it. All of our surrounding cattlemen are feeling it, and the reason their data is skewed is because nobody's coming to the table. Just like we talked about before, nobody's coming to the table because they're worried about backlash in the media and dealing with all of the things that happen there. But also, the reason they haven't. There's a lot of ranchers that won't get stuff confirmed and won't come to the table and have that data presented is because there's nothing that the department has been doing about it. The department right now is a perfect example. There was a 3 and 30 days that follows the wolf plan. They got to lethal criteria. They went in, they put a kill order out on them, and it been on for 6 days, and then they pull their team out of the field.
And they didn't get
they didn't kill
a wolf.
They didn't kill nothing. It was 6 days. They pulled the kill order, and the director said, well, it's time to reevaluate. Well, the 3 and 30 days right there from a producer standpoint, from a producer standpoint, we've just lost 3 calves.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you have some that you're going to doctor or some of the chances of them being a marketable calf is very
They're
low.
gone. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so to what now? Where's the justice in that? You know, I mean, we just lost.
But the law is that in 3 and 30 days, they're supposed to come take those wolves out no matter what.
They're supposed to.
And you said it was an open-ended order.
Yeah, there was no time limit on it.
No time limit on it, and then they just rescinded it with 6 days.
Yeah, to reevaluate, and they said we can come back to lethal if there's more depredations. Well, at that rate, now the producer has to lose more cattle, you know, and I'm using this one example, but our outfit has been put in this situation time and time again, and we've had certain wolf packs that we've got up to 25 confirmed, and what I mean, no action, you know, so it's really, really tough to be an advocate for the Department of Fish and Wildlife when this is their track record and this is how they operate, you know, and then they take that data and throw it out and say, oh, the wolf conflict's better. It's better. It's cut in half. Well, no, it's because you guys have made yourself completely irrelevant and nobody wants to work with you. And so, I mean, and that trickles down just from the department to our local and state officials. I mean, the department won't perform. Nobody else is coming to our aid either. Our commissioners and our sheriff, nobody's done nothing. So, I mean, from a producer, I'm glad we're doing this conversation right here and trying to get more coverage on it because there's nothing else we can do better. We've done all their non-lethals.
We have too.
Checked every single box that we can check. And we're still losing cattle, and everybody just says, well, Dad, we can't help you. We're worried about getting sued, or we just can't stick our neck out. Somebody's going to have to stick their neck out for the ranching community. I don't know who it's going to be, but somebody's going to have to, and that's what it's going to take to get anywhere in a positive direction.
Well, and it's not just the depredation, you know, and we've touched on it. When normally you take a herd of 100 head of cattle. And when you do them under normal circumstances, you put bulls with them, you breed them, you come back, you preg them in the fall, you'll get somewhere between 2 and 5% naturally open cattle that didn't carry calf to just, you know, or whatever. You throw wolves in the middle of it now you're looking at somewhere between 15 and 30% open. So all of a sudden you go from 2 to 5 cows out of 100 to 30. And then you apply numbers to that. And you also take a herd of cattle that the wolves, they may not be killing them. They may be training pups on them, but whatever they're doing, they're harassing, and they're running them off the good feed, running them off those mountains, and you drive them back up and they run them off. And so now you've got a group of cattle out of 100 calves. The calves are going to be probably 100 pounds lighter or more than the other cattle that aren't. So that's, again, that's right off the top. And then the other thing that worries me, especially with ours, because they're protected, we can't do anything, just like you guys. So out of the 6 cattle that they killed this spring, 2 of them were within 500 yards of a house on each side of it. I mean, they have no respect. They have no fear. They have no reason to have fear because we're not allowed to do anything to them. And so I'm even worried about, you know, Mary and I raised our boys. We've been in these mountains for 50 years since we got married. And we raised the boys. They'd go up there and they would spend all afternoon out in the timber playing, you know. I don't care what they were doing. They didn't have to worry about it. Now, I would not let my kids wander out into the brush, not with the wolf problem the way it is, because it's going to get to the point if those little kids get out there and you get a pack of 8 or 10 wolves, they'd be pretty easy pickings. And it's to that point. It's getting way out of hand.
When I was at the King Ranch up in Coulee City, I mean, I'd go out and ride a colt by myself. I'd have a whole, when the coyotes got bad. Yeah. And they're a quarter the size of these wolves. Yeah. And the coyote, I mean, I'd get a whole pack of coyotes surrounding me out there. Yeah. You know, and trying to either steal my dog or, you know, I'd have to put my dog in the saddle or whatever. So you start talking about something that's 4 times the size of a coyote.
Well, and that's the other deal. You know, you look back in the turn of the century, in the 1900s. In the 1900s, there were 74 million people in the United States. Now there's 375 million people in the United States. So they talk about the ecosystem, and they put the wolves into Yellowstone Park to help balance the ecosystem because there were too many elk and on and on. So they put them in there. Well, yeah, they took care of the elk herds. Now they went from 25,000 down to 4,000, I think now. Yeah. All the moose are gone. I mean, and the problem is the ecosystem, there's too many people now as far as you're never going to get it back to what it was in the 1800s. Sure. I mean, that's just common sense. So don't put an apex killer in the middle of it there is nothing, the wolf is at the very top of the food chain. There's nothing to eliminate wolves. So, that's why they're not manageable. You can't manage your way out of this deal without lethality. And that's all we're asking is just, let us do what we know how to do and protect our herds. That's the best thing.
And we're seeing so many of these ungulate populations dropping so quickly. What do they think is going to happen?
Absolutely.
When it turns into where California is at right now, where you don't see, you drive through the mountains, you don't see one deer.
Yeah.
Or you don't see anything, and they're littered with wolves down there.
Yeah.
And I mean, the study that UC Davis did, and the gal that did the study was packed around with us the whole time we were filming for a week. And she went around and picked up wolf scat for, I think it was 6-month period. And at 95% of the DNA in the wolf scat was bovine. So they're not eating anything. There's nothing else to eat down there besides the cows. And they're even more protected in California than they are about anywhere. And you can't even harass them off your cows. If they're out there killing your cow or starting to kill your cow, it's illegal for you to go out there and harass them.
Where's the common sense? That's
exactly
all we
right.
want. That's all we want is just a little common sense. Yeah. I mean, like that. These cattle are not ungulates. They're not wildlife out there running around the range. These cattle are ours. We own them. This is a commodity, and we don't want our outfit. We've never taken any of the compensation because we've always felt like it is they're buying our silence. Once you get paid, then you lose a little bit of clout to be able to speak out on the issue, and that is the stance that we've taken. And right, wrong, or indifferent. And that's where it comes in. Our local officials should be stepping in and saying, okay, this is a public, this is your public property, your private property, and it's yours, and it's a taking, you know. So that's where they should step in and help us out, help the ranching community out. Take a side, don't quit riding the fence, and back your agricultural producers. So that's what we want.
Well, the other thing that differentiates even like Washington, a lot of Oregon, and California is, and from California, the two, Washington and Oregon, is the majority of that ground down in California is private ground. There's hardly any public ground or allotments down there. There are some, but the majority of that ground in those ranches, they have some big ranches in the north, and they run on their ground. And the wolves are killing them on private ground. So, I mean, in my mind, the perfect solution is to get the president to say, okay, if they're on my federal ground that I'm in charge of and they're harassing cows and we want ranchers out there, you can go take them out. If they're on, private ground and they're harassing your cows or they're killing your cows, you can take them, the rancher can take them out and you can get rid of them. But if it's on state ground and California wants to, and they don't have a lot of state ground, they've got some, but not a lot. But I mean, if it's on if Washington State, Oregon, and California and Colorado don't want to manage the wolves to a point where the federal ground can be used, then by God, they should just be able to manage their own, state ground, not the private and the federal. But
they're making it almost impossible to utilize federal permits. I know personally in our area that there has been at about 4 or 5 producers in the last 5 years that have closed up shop. Yeah. And that isn't going to be us. We're going to keep going till the end of this. All right. And I'm not blaming anybody for calling it quits, because it's got a pencil, it's got a figure, and if you can't do it anymore, well, that's too bad, And but it's becoming a big enough issue where these federal permits they're vital to our operations. They really are, and I don't know how to make people understand that we don't have another place to go, because I mean that we've had our permit for 80 years. And we've relied on that permit, not just for the grass and for what it is, but it has been a staple in how we've managed our operation. And to lose that over a wolf is just beyond me.
It doesn't make sense.
There's no common sense. I mean, the feds want us there. We've managed it well for 80 years, and we just want to continue running our cattle on the allotments and our private ground. And to take when the ranches in our area lose their allotments, there's not much anybody can do to keep that ranch going. I mean, right. They have to close up shop. It's not like we got 100,000 acres of private ground that we're just running on and stuff like that. They're vital to the ranches in our community. They really are.
And most communities, honestly, most communities
in the Northwest for sure.
Right.
Right. Idaho.
You get into Nevada and some of that, but even in Nevada, those BLM permits are vital for those guys.
Yeah. And the Forest Service has kicked people off of those. I've been dealing with that for 18 years now or better. The Forest Service has taken AUMs away for wild horses, and wild horses that aren't even supposed to be in those areas. And nothing like the government to screw something up. I mean, there's a good program to screw something up, whether it's ESA or the Wild Horse and Burro Act or whatever. Anything that you put out there that is a wild animal, has to be managed somehow.
It does. It does.
And it was funny because your son Blake was here earlier, and he brought up the sea lion issue, and which is kind of funny because it was unprompted, but and he made that comparison of, if you're a fisherman in the sea lion and you're eating all your fish, you're out of business. And, we've got a major problem with sea lions that are on the ESA, and, I call them either the prairie dogs of the sea or the wild horses of the ocean, because it's the same kind of a deal. It's another government program where there's no management, and it has devastated fisheries and salmon runs and people's ability. I mean, hell, it's devastating the tribe's ability to go get their quotas on their salmon out of the river. So, the tribes are able to go do that now. They're able to go deal with those. But another thing Blake brought up was there's two different scenarios going on with these tribes, and everybody says, well, get the tribes to go do it. Well, they can do it. Some of them can. But like Warm Springs has a treaty that here in Oregon, and they're close to you. I mean, they come fairly close to you down there, but they have a treaty that they have to manage things the same way and they use the Oregon State Fish and Wildlife to help them, their program, and to manage all their wildlife. And they get paid to do that. They get state money to do that and be part of that treaty. Because the Colvilles, they don't have that same sort of a treaty. They can go do
whatever they need to
do and whatever they want to do to manage that wildlife. And that's there's some folks on the Warm Springs Reservation that want to be able to manage them and want to be a part of getting the ESA lifted and being able to manage those wolves on there. Because they're already starting to lose a bunch of cattle on Warm Springs, and there are producers there. Another prime example of that is down in Tule River Indian Reservation outside of Porterville, California. They dumped a bunch of Roosevelt elk on the reservation. Well, there's a bunch of wolves down there now. So those elk are gone.
Yeah.
They just killed them off and ran them off, and they're all gone. So when the tribes start losing all their traditional meat sources, that's when they start to get excited about doing something about things. So hopefully we can get some tribes to see the light and know that we're not calling for the eradication of all wolves. We're calling for management. Jeff Flood says it the best when he said, we don't have a wolf problem. We have a wolf management problem.
Yeah, and that's true.
Yeah.
You look at Idaho, they got a bounty on them. They want and they still can't get rid of them.
They say, no, it's not a bounty. It's a repayment if you go kill one. If you go
call
kill
it what
one,
you may.
You can put in a request to get all your hunting fees and your gas money to get there and all of your hotel.
Okay, so it's not a real bounty.
No, it's
but
not.
the point is, you're not gonna get rid of them. But coyotes are another good example. We'll hire a helicopter every couple of years to fly several ranches around us, and they'll kill up to 800 coyotes in one pass up through there. You still hear them howl the next night. It doesn't eliminate the coyotes, but it manages them. That's all we're asking. Well, it manages them.
Justin Webb had told me the numbers on it, and out of all the tags that were issued in Wyoming, because he does 3 states, he does Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho, and out of those 3 states, less than 1/4% of those tags were filled.
Right.
Because they're not easy to get.
That's right.
They're not easy to get to. Now the trapping, when they have trapping tags also. So the trapping did a little bit higher. It was, I want to say it was about 10% or maybe better than that. But the hunting, they talk about everybody going to Idaho. Hey, come over to Idaho and go hunt a wolf. Yeah. You're gonna be hard pressed to find them buggers.
Well, and I had a guy tell me a game cop the other day. We were talking about this very subject, and we were talking about management. And he says you have to kill at least 20% of the population to manage it. At least 20%. And he said the same thing. He said they've killed, normally those tags they kill about 2%.
Yep.
So. The management on the wolf in Washington is non-existent.
No,
unless we can finally twist an arm hard enough to get some action and get some relief, which we have in the past, but it's been very, very sparse. But as far as a management factor, we're not even touching that. We're not touching 5%.
Well, and they want you to follow all the protocol first. Did you haze them? Did you use go through all the steps to scare them off? Well, the wolves are down in our private ranches too. Mm-hmm. So I feel pretty guilty about going up there and hazing them off our ranch over to the neighbors.
Absolutely.
That's not what it's about.
Yeah,
and then they haze them off to another guy, and then they're back. They don't go anywhere. They just go from one ranch to the other.
Yeah, that's best case scenario.
Yeah.
But everybody says, well, what have you done for non-lethals?
Yeah.
And does range riders work and this and that? And they go through it. We've tried them all.
Yeah.
And best case scenario, once wolves get habituated to eating cattle, is I push them off of me onto Butch.
Yeah. That helps you guys, and then it's my problem.
Well, and you look at a place like Sierra Valley down there in California, and all them ranches, there's 5 or 10 big ranches right there in Sierra Valley. It's one giant valley, and the mountains surround it, and it's got mountains around it, and this wolf pack's up on this mountain, this wolf pack's over here, and they start hazing them. And they feel exactly the same way. I don't want to haze them over to Rick Roberti's place when they're, because he's going to lose a bunch of cows. So they all feel bad, and they're all trying to figure out how to deal with this and be neighborly. And it's just not possible.
No.
And the range riding is, I know I'm going to piss some people off when I say this, but the range riding is non-effective when you got the story like you told about your father-in-law going and laying in a cot. They say as long as there's a human around, they'll stay away. But he goes and lays in a cot in the middle of a herd one night and still gets 2 calves killed and almost trampled.
Yeah.
Well, there's human presence there. And if you don't think those wolves got a good enough sniffer to tell there's human presence there, you're not very smart. And they still come in and do that. And these wolves are standing there 30 yards away from people killing cows.
Yeah.
At OR 158, they finally went in and whacked him on the human health risk. And Joe Villagrana was, down there where he was at, he was telling me, you could stand, he just sent me a picture of him 30 yards away from him, just staring at him, growling at him because he was eating a calf.
Well, this year we had we had our problem winter before last, the big problem. So this time when our cattle got to that ranch and we turned them out, I hired a guy and I said, I want you to go through this ranch every other day, take a gun, shoot in the air, haze them. I want them to know the presence is here. So Mary and I went up to salt some cattle. And we go up there to salt. Well, all the cattle are down in this one draw. And I told her, I said, and the grass is great. I go, that is weird that they're all kind of in one spot, So we go on up the ridge and I look across the draw and there's a bunch of elk laying over there in the sun. And I said, well, the elk are, must not be wolves. The elk are right there. Right. So we come around the corner and we look down the hill. Well, they just had killed this cow. They just had killed her. And so to make a long story short, the guy that I hired to go through there, he went through there at 7:30 that morning. We went through to put salt out probably 11, and they came in behind him and killed that cow. So, it's not working, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. And ODF and W, they've got their hazers and they've got 6 counties to work through. And, it's great. It gives them a job and they try to do their best, but And everybody you run into, everybody that I've worked with, they really have been good people, and they're going, man, this isn't good. We don't know what to do. Our hands are tied. There's somebody up above us that's keeping us from doing this or that. And I don't know who's somebody up above is making all the decisions, because everybody I've talked to realizes this wolf deal it's out of control.
It's out of control. And like you said about the range rider, I don't blame the range riders.
I don't either.
No. We've had several range riders through CAPAL, Cattle Producers of Washington, and we never did want the department's range riders because we felt like they were not looking out for our best interests.
Right.
They were trying to pick our management of the forest apart. They're trying to make us look bad.
Right.
They really were. We had a few early on, and we didn't like it. And so we wanted a range rider we could trust that wasn't going to be sitting here saying, you guys you salted in the wrong area when we have established salt licks.
Yeah.
So that's the reason that we brought that. So, but the range riders have tried to do a good job. The Cattle Producer of Washington range riders, they've tried to do us a good job, but it's not their fault, because we've always considered the range riders to, the best case scenario for them is they can find the dead ones. Because like you said, the human presence doesn't matter. Once the wolves get habituated to wanting or to killing cattle, then the range riders will be there all day, and then they'll leave and they'll come back right after they're gone. Or like in my father-in-law Bill's scenario, he was laying there on a cot right in the middle of the whole herd, and they came in there and didn't care. He was hooping and hollering, trying with a flashlight. Yeah. It was middle of the night and trying to get something done, and they didn't care, So that's the range riders might take a little offense to that, but the best case scenario is they can find the dead ones. But if the dead ones, if we're not getting to lethal, what's the point of finding the dead ones?
Yeah, they should be going, like Jeff said, they should be going straight to lethal when that happens, because if you don't go straight to lethal, you're not stopping the problem.
Your only
You're not even helping the problem.
They would kill less wolves. I tried to tell these people that if you guys were truly wolf advocates, and that's truly something you guys were concerned about, and the wolf is what we were worried about, they would come in and they would go to lethal way faster. Because when one wolf starts thinking maybe he'd like to chase some cattle and eat some cattle, and then he brings all of his wolf buddies that are in the pack over there, and they start training them, and then he starts training the pups and stuff like that.
Right.
Well, by the end of it, you got 10 cattle killing wolves. Well, if we would have been fast response on the first couple instances, maybe we could kill that one that was a offender,
right,
and then the other ones would go live on wild game like I guess they're supposed to,
Right.
There's more of a potential for that, and we wouldn't have to kill 17 wolves. We could kill 1 or 2 or 3,
right.
It would be,
and make a difference.
Right.
Yeah. I had a guy tell me one time, he was in Idaho, and he was kind of, when they first let the wolves loose over there, and he was on a big ranch there on the Snake River, and they were doing they were trying to do a study on, what they were doing. And so same deal, it got out of control. So they were going to try to do the lethal method. So they collared the alpha female, I think it was, and mainly to track the pack. And then they would kill a certain amount of wolves out of that pack. And he said they never quit killing cattle until they finally killed the alpha female that trained the whole pack.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I had a guy tell me one time, he said he was in the wolf program early on, and now he manages a allotment that we have, but a really good guy, but he had a lot of knowledge about wolves. And he said those first wolves that crossed the Snake River, he said he said, I don't know if they're smart or they're something, but every wolf that came across the river would cross in that one spot that they trained or they taught each other, or they knew the spot. And he said generations of wolves would always go to that spot and cross. He said they're so smart. But
sounds like a sniper outpost.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. That is true.
Yeah.
Don't say that, Dave.
I'm not advocating that. But.
Well, and neither are we.
No,
honestly, I don't even blame the wolves, for goodness sakes. They're just doing what they're bred to do. But we've got to figure out a way to manage them differently, because the way I had first called it a failed experiment, but it's not a failed experiment. It's a huge success.
Right.
But now it's out of control because they had no idea what they were creating. And now it's like, you either got to manage them, and the only management is finally lethal, because you are not going to fix any other problem by hazing or flattery or,
We've reached a saturation point, though.
Yeah.
Now, in
Washington, I think we're so far beyond that. I don't think they really even know.
They have no idea. They're wolf
true
tracks.
amount of breeding pairs and packs. And
I mean, it's wild. I mean, we've reached that saturation point, and it is a compounding problem.
Right.
It's not a linear problem. And a lot of organizations and people feel like it's linear, like if we just throw some money at it, or if we solve it 1 year, then it's over, I mean, so, because there has been wolves that have got killed on ours. And you know what? After the painstaking process of getting there, it took us forever. And we finally got a couple of those complete pack removals. Whether we had, the last one was about 3 wolves. We had 2 great years. And, that next winter, or that winter after we got that pack removal, there was already wolves back in there.
They say in 4 years it'll be the same.
So there was already wolves back in there just 2 months after the pack removal was gone.
Probably using the same den.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows what that? But there was wolves in there, but we didn't have any problems for 2 years because of we were able to get them offenders taken out, and so that was a success. But getting to that point was so painful that it just makes it not worth it. You know?
Well, and you get CBD and Center for Biological Diversity and Western Watersheds and all these wolf groups suing over managing the wolves, when they should be out there applauding the fact that the ESA, they've reestablished the wolves. They're way over quota. I mean, we are so far over quota of what is on paper in the ESA as full recovery. We're so far beyond that, and nobody's doing anything about it.
Right.
This administration wants to do something about it, but they've been sued. In the first Trump administration, they did something about it, and then they got sued, and that's all of that stuff is still out there. So they're trying to figure out their way around how to deal with this, and I think there's a good chance they're going to find that way. But the fact that these groups just want to keep sucking money out of it, it's like their only fundraiser is to say, oh, don't delist the wolves,
Yeah.
Instead of these groups going, hey, look what we did. We reestablished the wolves. Now it's to the point where they need to be managed. Go manage them, and we'll watch to make sure that, they don't go too far down. But they're suing to stop it. And why don't they move on to something else that they want to help out or deal with?
Yeah.
It's like a never-ending cycle with these groups. They just want to keep fundraising, and they bring in a lot of money over this stuff. So.
They do. And that's the part where it gets really defeating as a producer, is you have environmental groups that have pretty well empty. They got deep pockets from their donors and whatever it may be, and then so we got them against us, and then we have the state of Washington, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, that's they're against us whether they'll admit it or not. I don't care how many times I have a biologist tell me that he's not a wolf advocate. You're in the wrong camp, buddy. I will never believe you.
No.
Yeah, you can tell me that 100,000 times, and I'm still not gonna believe you. You know, I mean, that's your whole job is to be a wolf advocate and manage the wildlife. You're not a rancher. You don't got a rusty bolt in the cow herd. You know,
Right.
and so they get funded by the federal government also.
Yeah.
And to manage the wolves, and they've done nothing but make it harder for us and try to put people out of business as a state organization. And from the environmentalists, I mean, how does a producer that's trying to make a go and manage and you have all the things that it entails to be a cattle producer? The long hours of calving or moving cattle around the mountains, and then you have at the end of it, you have something like this happen, and then how do you fight that? You can't fight it because you don't got the deep pockets like these organizations and the state. Mm-hmm. What are we going to do? Tie up our ranches in a legal battle that lasts for 10 years and breaks us, and then we go under anyway? For what? Yeah. You know, I don't know. I get so frustrated that I can't hardly think. So.
Well, you're right. And even the ODF and W guys that I deal with, you know, they've even come out and said, you know what, we spend all our time on this wolf deal now. They can't even do the rest of their job of managing wildlife and trying to figure out why all the mule deer are gone. And, you know, I mean, it's just, it's
big
become
cats, bears, and wolves.
There
now.
we go.
You know,
yeah.
I mean,
yes.
All you got to do is run a few numbers on how much those three eat and how little we're controlling them or how protected they are. It's like California. Gavin Newsom sits there and goes, well, I don't know why we don't have any deer or elk anymore.
Yeah.
Or, you know, whatever. And it's like, because you have thousands and thousands of big cats.
Of predators.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think these biologists are so out of touch with the circle of life. It just blows my mind. You know, I mean, I hate to pick on them, but.
Well, that kid up in Okanagan or up in Colville that we interviewed, and, you know, he politely, he agreed to be interviewed and be in the documentary. And he very politely called me and begged me not to put him in there because he got in trouble for being on camera there.
Yeah,
and I didn't want the kid to lose his job, but
and that's part of the problem.
He did say, and then probably he got his chain jerked because in the trailer for the documentary, if you listen to him, he says, the wolves don't need our help for recovery.
No.
Those are some of his exact words.
Oh, but they flipped over that.
Oh man!
But you know, they took away a bear season, and they say our mule deer count is so low it's pretty non-existent. Yeah. So they want to make mule deer a draw only. God forbid we start managing predators. All right, let's take a hunting season away and make it harder for the hunters to go hunt mule deer.
You can't go hunt a cat up there, right?
You can hunt them with your feet. They've taken away every single successful way to kill.
They took away your spring bear hunt too, didn't they?
Yeah, and so they took away the spring bear, and they made it to where you can't bait. So you can't bait bears,
right?
You can't hound dog cougars,
right?
And you can't leg hold trap coyotes.
Yeah.
So the big three in our area.
But they can't understand what the mule deer problem is.
But you can go out and bait deer. But the deer populations are getting so low that we're going to have to take away your over-the-counter mule deer tag, and you're going to have to put in for it.
Yeah.
How about this? Let's resurrect the deer herd by some predator management.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. They actually did in Oregon. You know, you're not allowed to run them with dogs, so they quit doing that. So same deal, the mule deer population is headed in the bucket. So they did a mule deer enhancement study, and a couple of the local guys that had some hounds, they allowed them to run cats with hounds again, just in a certain area in our upper ranch where the wolves are now. It was in that study. So we would get every cat they killed, they would tell the ranchers where they killed him, how many, and they killed it wasn't a big area. There were maybe 3 or 4 total ranches in the study, but they killed 37 cats.
Oh,
and you can't believe how many more fawns that you saw, and more deer. It really did help the mule deer.
Yeah.
You know,
It's crazy.
We have a wildlife specialist up there. His name's Jeff Flood, and he runs problem cougars for the sheriff's department.
Right.
And I don't know his exact numbers. I wish I did. But the first year that he did it, he got on there because it was a public safety concern. I mean, and that's right where we're at with these wolves.
We're with the wolves now. Yes,
and
absolutely.
And the bears, I mean, these predators are a public safety concern. And I don't care who you are. You better believe that.
Yeah.
And these cats that are coming in and depredating on people's livestock, and they're dragging dogs off of porches, and there was a little girl that got attacked, and it's a bad deal. They're 160, and I think it was 160 his first year, 130 his first year that he got. These are problem cats that people that they're calling the sheriff's department, and they're coming in and killing people's livestock. So
he's killing over 100 a year.
Yeah.
You go up in the woods up there.
And those are just the problem ones.
Yeah, those are just the problem ones. I mean, our area grows some big cougars. I mean, it does. I mean, there was a lot of big trophy guys that would come up to that area to hunt cats when it was still it was 90s.
Yeah, it was the 90s when they did that.
Yeah. But they shut it off, and that's a main reason why our mule deer herds and whitetail are
it's a huge reason.
They were in trouble before we got wolves.
Yeah.
And now that we got wolves here, they're decimated.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hear people say, well, let's just send them all over to the coast. Well, there's going to be somebody there that has to deal with the issues. And you can't feel good about that. I mean, I'm sure, we turned them loose in downtown Seattle and probably clean up the homeless problem. But I don't know.
Well, now we're getting somewhere. Yeah. No, it's when you think about it, and I do worry about eventually there's going to be some human interaction. It's coming. There was a hunter up there where we have one permit, and he put out 8 trail cameras, I think right before bow season, on all the water holes, looking for elk, and 6 out of the 8 had wolves on them. Mm-hmm. There was one hunter, it snowed just a skiff. We didn't have much of a winter, obviously, and this fall, maybe in November, it snowed just enough to cover the road. And there was a hunter that took a picture of the wolf tracks in the road, and it looked like there were over 20 wolves running that road. I mean, I really do think the numbers are so much bigger than anybody realizes. That it's going to come to a head one of these days.
The administration, one of the ways that they were able to go to Sierraville and take out the pack that was down there depredating a lot and really causing a lot of problems last year was the human health risk.
Yeah, they
did it on a human health risk situation. So another thing that there's some smart guys down there that are taking care of stuff, and they've got, and the UC Davis people, and there's actually, this is surprising, there's one researcher from Berkeley that's actually helping out a bunch, which Berkeley's a petri dish of all the animal rights and environmental groups.
It is a pretty big dish.
Yeah. So it's kind of surprising that this person's part of that, but and she is on our side. The Californians have gone around, they've made maps of where all these collared wolves, and the California won't give out the data in real time. So they have to go back and do it. And if you go look at some of the Siskiyou County wolf Facebook page and some of the others, and they've got all the collar data, but they made maps that have all the bus stops,
right,
and the houses and how close these wolves are. So and that was a request by Karen Bud Fallon, who's third in line at the Interior. But the human health risk, when people talk about how wolves don't attack humans, it doesn't take a 1-minute Google search to look at the same type of wolves that are in Europe, Ukraine, Russia, and to see all the people that have been killed by wolves over there. I mean, there's a lot of them, and very recent. So there's been attacks in Canada on people, on humans. So to think that these wolves won't do that, or, and like we were talking about the campgrounds and all these people up in your area,
right,
where
Right.
all these campgrounds are, where people are from the city are used to being able to go up on all these.
And they
public
bring their
lands.
kids, and
Yeah.
you know, it's as much, you know, if they knew what we knew, if they knew how many wolves are actually around those campgrounds, they wouldn't let their kids get out of their sight. I mean, that it's serious that you know, I hope it never happens, but it sure could. It's a matter of time. There's a book. It's a really good book, and I hope anybody that watches this goes and finds it. It's called The Real Wolf, and go buy it and read it, because it's really well put together, and it's put together by he was a lawyer out of Texas, I think. I may be wrong on this, but I think I'm right. He was a lawyer out of Texas that went to Montana hunting all the time, and he'd get up there, and the ranchers were just so concerned about this wolf deal when he'd get up there, and he was pro-wolf. He's thinking, they belong here. You guys are exaggerating. It can't be this bad. And so he started doing research and looking into it, and it absolutely flipped him clear around how big of a compounding wreck this is going to become if we don't do something about it. So I really do recommend. It's called The Real Wolf. Go read it. Even if you're pro wolf, if you're negative, it doesn't matter. Get this book and read it, because it really does open your eyes.
Yeah. Mathan, you got anything, words of wisdom for the end of this deal?
Well, I guess all I would say was I'm glad to see Butch coming out, and I would like to see more get producers, you know, come out and be vocal about this issue. You know, you don't want to die in silence, and it's coming for all of us. So I guess that would be my recommendation is try to get out and make people aware that don't have a lot of touch with our industry. And but on that same note, be careful and protect yourself, because there are, like I told you before, I mean, you will be targeted for coming out. So know that, but.
Well, and you know, you'd look at it, and just like Mathan and I were visiting off camera, the total cost that comes out of out of a rancher's pocket is incredible. You know, you look at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that we're losing just by mismanagement, and that's the biggest deal. It's keep your wolves where the wolves need to be. Just let us handle them as predators, and we'll be fine.
Yeah. Thank you, Butch, and thanks, Mathan, for coming out and telling us your story. And I'm sure it's going to raise a lot of eyebrows when the people get to hear it. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us. You know, all we're asking as ranchers is just let us use some common sense in this deal. It's not rocket science. We just need to kind of get a hold of this, because it's compounding, as Mathan said earlier. It's a compounding problem, and if you understand finance and what compounding means, it's going to be so out of control in such a short amount of time that we really do need to move quickly.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys.
All right.